Welcome to Digital Learning, an initiative of Directorate of Collegiate Education, Government of Karnataka. Eloquentia 1 is the title of the first semester general English textbook prescribed for Bengaluru City University. This is the e-content related to the BSc stream. So in this session, Model Millionaire, a short story written by Oscar Wilde, has been prescribed. So I shall be engaging in detail with this short story. I'm Nandana NJ, Assistant Professor of English at Government First Aid College, Malleshwaram, Bengaluru. Let us have a look at the contents. I shall be going in this order. First comes the learning objectives. Learning objectives refer to what are the things that we can look forward through the course of this session. Session outcomes relate to whether we have met the objectives, whether the learning objectives has been accomplished. That we shall get to see at the end of the session. And a recapitulation of previous knowledge is very, very important. This I have been reiterating time and again. Recapitulation means trying to remember what we know previously. All of us know something about everything. Yes, there are certain cases where we are not aware of anything at all. But whatever knowledge we have, the previous knowledge, definitely it will help us to understand the future knowledge that we're about to accumulate. And then we shall proceed to the introduction of the author. This is again one of the most important phases of the session, because the author or the artist or whoever the person is who is giving this piece of art or this piece of literature, etc., we have to introduce ourselves to the author. We always have to see where the person was born, in which society was he born, where was he working, where was his art prevalent, what was the society during his times, what were the influences on him, the positive and negative both. As much as we understand the author, the better it will be for us to understand the piece of literature that he has created. Then we shall go to the introduction of the lesson. We shall try to see how introduce ourselves to the lesson, as in what is the major theme of the lesson, what are the important facts that we need to understand before proceeding. Then we shall also see the purpose of the author. Every artist, whenever he composes a piece of art, there is a purpose with which he or she is doing it. What is it that the person is trying to communicate through the course of his piece of art? Here, for example, the literary story, the short story by Oscar Wilde. What is the purpose of the author? What is it trying to show through the course of the story? That also we shall try to comprehend. And in the end, as expected, we have a recapitulation session to go through whatever we have amassed through the course of this session. And in the end, we shall have multiple choice questions to assess our comprehension. The learning objectives of this session: to recapitulate previous knowledge, to acquaint or familiarize ourselves with short story as a literary genre. Genre means a type. To develop interest for reading a short story, introduction to the author, introduction to the lesson, to comprehend the author's purpose of writing the story, to enlarge the imaginative power of students, to better develop their functional writing skills. Let us see whether all these objectives will be met through the course of this session. The session outcomes: by the end of this session, the student can be acquainted or familiarized with short story as a literary genre. To define genre, the simplest synonym would be type. Like, for example, literature is a word which encompasses various genres. And what are the genres? Genres which come under literature: poetry, short story, novels, drama, you name it, and all these types are known as literary genre. So here we are going to familiarize ourselves with the short story. To develop interest for reading a short story, the objective being that once student understands this short story, he or she might develop a further interest for reading much better short stories by other acclaimed writers. Introduction to the author and background. Introduction to the short story. To comprehend. Comprehend means to understand the author's purpose of writing a short story. To enlarge the imaginative power of the students. And by the end of the session, the student can look forward for an improved vocabulary, word power, and how it has fortified his or her linguistic skills. Let us go for the recap of previous knowledge. Always remember, A few questions are always given at the beginning of the lesson. If you observe keenly, just below the title, the first unit would be something titled as pre-reading activity. A few questions will be provided there. The teacher usually discusses the questions with the students so that it's more like a brainstorming session. A few of the students might be aware of what is given there. A few might not be aware, but still the group discussion session, whatever happens, will lead to various outcomes. Many of them will be able to understand or maybe increase their knowledge better once this pre-reading activity is done. So let us start with the recap of previous knowledge. The first question: have you ever judged someone by their appearance and later realized that they were completely different? Share your experience. Well, as I'm the only one doing this, I will be discussing my point of view. Yes, initially, when I was young, I have done this. I have judged people by their appearance, and I've realized that appearances are deceptive. I've learned my lessons the hard way, and I've tried not to repeat the same mistake time and again. This attitude of us, or this particular aspect of human beings judging other human beings based on their dress, attire, their social status, etc., that is what is called as prejudice. In Kannada, Purvagraha. Prejudice is when we have this preconceived opinion about people and we try to judge them. Just because a person is wearing tattered clothes, it doesn't mean the person is not educated or the person doesn't know how to communicate. See, when we just because we see a person wearing tattered clothes, we come to the conclusion that that person is a beggar or somebody who is in dire straits. That is necessarily not so. Definitely, all of us have gone through situations in life where we have judged people by their appearance and later realized they were entirely different to what we had perceived them to be. The second question: can you recall a time when you performed an act of kindness for someone without expecting anything in return? How did it make you feel and what was the outcome? Well, to answer this question, I cannot exactly recall, but there have been times when I have helped people, or when I have been kind enough to other people with no expectation in return. And the major feeling that I've got in return is a feeling of goodness. Somewhere I feel that again leads to selfishness. See, in that sense, we help somebody so that we feel good. Well, that again is wrong. What I feel at this age, I've learned a lesson that if we are going to help somebody, it should be due to the good-heartedness of our nature, not to expect happiness in return. But then, yes, everything said and done, when you help somebody without expecting anything in return, and when you see the gratitude on their face, it does make us feel happy. The last question: do you believe that wealth can buy happiness? Why or why not? Discuss with examples. I'm sure when I ask this question in the class, half of the students will say that yes, wealth can definitely buy happiness, while many will say no. If you ask me, I'm a generation ahead of you. If you ask me, money or wealth exactly doesn't buy happiness, but it gives us the means to become happy. For example, if you have the money, you can go out, you can buy some things or whatever it catches your fancy. When you buy the product, it makes you happy. So in that context, when you buy something, money is required and that money is giving you happiness. But then again, such happiness is temporary. Compare this kind of happiness when you buy a product with the other kind of happiness. For example, going out with your friends, being happy or spending happy time with your friends, your siblings, your cousins, or just being staying at home with your parents and doing things that you really enjoy. There again, you cannot put a price tag. In fact, what I suggest is wealth is important, but then it is not the most important. And happiness can be derived without wealth also. I have incorporated here an image which talks about the things that we need to, that, if we end up doing it, we can be happy without the usage of wealth. For example, being there for others. When you are there for somebody's problems, when you are there, it could be physically present or being morally supportive of the person, that actually gives us happiness. And then saying thank you. that the general etiquette seems to be vanishing nowadays, but saying thank you for the small deeds that definitely brings us happiness. Caring for animals. This I definitely endorse. Caring for animals. It is again a good thing. Lending a hand to people who are in trouble or chatting to a friend. In fact, you can see this, all of these acts do not require any wealth, but still in turn, it gives us happiness. So definitely wealth is not important to get happiness. Now let us define what is a short story. A short story is a piece of a prose fiction that typically can be read in one sitting and focuses on a self-contained incident or series of linked incidents with the intent of evoking a single effect or mood. So a story, as we are aware, it usually has a beginning and a end, and a few characters are there in the story, and the story starts from one point and it goes in a order, and there is some sort of conclusion. Very long stories are good to read, but then the present generation doesn't seem to have that much of focus. The short stories are good for the present generation, because once you read these short stories, you will be interested in how the genre proceeds. And if you are hooked to the short stories, maybe you can, try out the other genres of literature. Now let us introduce ourselves to the author. Introduction to the author, Oscar Wilde. I've incorporated an image of the author. Oscar Wilde was born on October 16, 1854 in Dublin, Ireland, into a family rich in literary and intellectual influence. Always family matters, and that is why I keep referring to the timeline in which he was born. 1854 was more or less 2 centuries ago, and we can see that clearly he was born much before the two world wars. So maybe the society at those times was much, stabilized, or at least it did not have the war-torn effects or the effects of the war at that time. He studied at Trinity College Dublin and Magdalen College Oxford, excelling in classics and aesthetics. Aesthetics refer to the fine arts. He was influenced by Walter Pater and the aesthetic movement. This is again a kind of movement in the English literature stream. Aesthetic movement, he was in fact influenced by him, and he won the Newdigate Prize for his poem Ravenna. He rose to fame with works like The Picture of Dorian Gray and satirical plays. Satirical means a play which has a sense of humor, which is farcical, which has a lot of comic elements in that, but still a message is also included. A satirical plays including the importance of being earnest. He was imprisoned in 1895 for his relationship with Lord Alfred Douglas, which led to his downfall. Society during those times was not as liberated as ours. Well, as I say, I really do not think the present society is as liberated, but compared to the previous timeline, it is slightly better. So homosexuality was frowned upon, and as a result, he was imprisoned. And imprisoned, he died there. He died in Paris in 1900, leaving a lasting legacy as one of the literature's most brilliant and controversial figures. Introduction to the short story. The Model Millionaire is a short story by Oscar Wilde, which was first published in 1887. It is a charming tale with wit. Wit means wherein the answers are quick, wherein the interaction between the characters are quick-witted. That is to say, the moment the character says something, there is a smart reply from the other side. That is known as wit. Irony in Kannada would be Vyangya, wherein you are mocking somebody, but in a humorous intent. And it also has a moral message. The story features a young man. He's the protagonist. And also it has a disguised millionaire and a surprising twist. This surprising twist is what is called as the characteristic feature of short stories. Most of the short stories which are popular all over the world has this one element, usually the twist at the end. Like for example, O. Henry. O. Henry is another brilliant short story writer. Most of his stories start, he has in fact authored more than 600 short stories. The stories start on a note, and as it proceeds, you tend to have a sort of conclusion in your mind. But when you come to the end or the conclusion, you get to see that there is a surprising twist in his stories. So O. Henry's stories, short stories, are known for that. Likewise, Oscar Wilde stories also have a surprising twist. In fact, this story has a surprising twist, which is very positive. Now, let us see the purpose of the author. Why did he compose this short story? To emphasize kindness, emphasize as in stress, kindness. Wilde shows that small, genuine acts of kindness matter. Definitely, it matters. Kindness is what, in fact, humanity is also known as humankind. But somewhere I feel humanity nowadays is not having any kindness for that matter. It is losing all kindness, though we are known to be the humankind. That kindness seems to be lacking, but at least reading such stories might, propel us to go towards the path of kindness once again. And the second in purpose of the author would be to critique materialism. Critique as in to take a negative stand. What is materialism? Materialism is when you give undue importance to money, wealth, and all the things that it can buy. So, through the course of this story, Oscar Wilde challenges society's focus on wealth and appearances. He also tries to entertain with irony. Instead of giving a story with a lot of didactic messages or giving a monologue wherein you say kindness is important, he uses irony. He also uses humor and surprise to deliver a moral through the course of the story. And he also tries to promote moral wealth. Look at the word moral wealth. This is a paradox because both moral and wealth are two extremes. Moral refers to ethics, principles, or virtues. Wealth usually is considered as something which is related to money. But then here he's trying to promote moral wealth. That is to say, true nobility is in one's character, not riches. Let us go through a few interesting facts about the story so that we understand the story much better in the next session. The story was first published in 1887 in The World, a London magazine society. The story features a millionaire disguised as a beggar, creating a clever twist and moral surprise. It reflects Wilde's belief that appearances can be deceiving, a common theme in his works. The generous act of giving just one sovereign, it's a kind of currency that was prevalent those times, results in a 10,000 pound reward, highlighting Wilde's theme of unexpected kindness. Wilde called the story a moral tale for children and adults. Look at that. Usually, moral tales, fables, Aesop's fables, Panchatantra example, are written for children, but then need not be. Moral tales do not have an expiry date as such. Moral tales can also be read by children, and moral tales can also be read by adults, because when you become an adult, you tend to lose the innocence of your childhood. So, Wilde called the story a moral tale of children and adults written with wit and simplicity. Wit, as I told you, as you go through the course of the story, you will get to see it has this smart talk in it. Unlike some of Wilde's darker or more satirical works, this story is light-hearted and uplifting, yet meaningful. See, that is why the students will definitely like this. It doesn't have a dark humor or a dark theme, etc. It is very light-hearted, and by the end of the story, you will also have a positive mindset. Where does the story take place? The setting is always important. The story is set in Victorian London during the late 19th century. That is why I told you we should always see where the author was born. So he has set the story during his own times, the Victorian London. It isn't unlike the present London as such. So royalty was still very much in vogue during the late 19th century. Most scenes take place in Alan Trevor's art studio, a character in the story, reflecting the artistic and upper class culture of the time. The other implied locations include Huey. He is the main protagonist. Huey's modest life setting and the luxurious world of Baron Hosmer. So that is the comparison between Huey's modest life setting and the luxurious world of Baron Hosmer. The time period, it takes place in the Victorian era. Victorian era is defined from 1837 to 1901. An interesting aspect is why exactly that timeline? Because Queen Victoria ruled over England from 1837 and expired in 1901. So that age is known as the Victorian era. And what were the themes of that time? It had a strict class structure, like how in India the curse of caste can be seen everywhere. Likewise, a strict class structure was seen in the Victorian era also. Emphasis on wealth and reputation was seen, and moral values combined with social hypocrisy. So these were the prevalent themes of his time, which Oscar Wilde has incorporated in his stories also. And by highlighting these negative aspects, he's trying to show how by giving undue importance to wealth, you are going to lose the values of your life. A few references that we need to look at so that things are much clearer in the next session. Sovereign, it is a kind of a currency or a coin. It is a gold coin worth £1, symbolizing Huey's kind but humble offering. We shall see how much of sovereigns is used, but then we'll just go through this definition. Sovereign is a gold coin. And what is the value of the gold coin? Equivalent to £1. Who is Baron Hausberg? He is a fictional character, but definitely a reflective of the real wealthy philanthropists of the Victorian age. Yes, Baron Hausberg represents most of the wealthy philanthropists. Who is a philanthropist? Philanthropist is a person who tries to give back to society, a rich person who tries to give back to society how much wealth he has accumulated through the course of social work. So, Baron Hausberg represents the wealthy philanthropist of his age. Marriage and dowry. Huey's need for £10,000 and how he wanted that money, not for himself or his selfishness, because he wanted it to marry Laura. It reflects the economic conditions and the expectations around marriage during that time. I've incorporated an image of a marriage here. I'm sure for most of our students at this age, you might think that marriage is something very romantic and the word marriage, ignites dreams of the future. But then, in fact, it isn't so. The popular culture depicts marriage as something which has a lot of romance, happily lived ever after. No, but then from what the adults see, marriage always is known for its marriage market. That would be the word I would like to see, because of the nexus between the relationship and money there. In fact, this was clearly seen during those era. And so Oscar Wilde has tried to incorporate the same in his story. Through the course of this story, critical commentary and social themes are also seen. And what are they? Superficial values. Through the course of this story, Oscar Wilde critiques or takes a negative stand against society's obsession with wealth, charm, and appearance over true character and virtue. Wealth is a prerequisite for marriage. Even now, this seems to be a prerequisite. It highlights how financial status is seen as essential for love and acceptance. For example, Laura's father's demand, irony of appearances, a rich baron disguised as a beggar. It challenges social perceptions of poverty and class. We shall see all of this through the course of the story in detail. I have incorporated an image here which shows the Victorian era society. Imagine the society as a triangle. You can see that the lower part of the society or the lower part of the triangle has that is the base part. A majority of the people come under the lower class. Here, it refers to the economic status. The lesser the money, they come under the lower class. And the middle class, this middle class of people, they fall between the lower class and the elite class. In fact, they make up not as much as the lower class, but yes, they definitely are more than half of the lower class. And you can see that in the top part, another triangle is there that refers to the elite class. Elite as in the so-called rich class. The irony here is the small triangle of elite class people rules over the entire society. So this was the classification of those times. So Oscar Wilde tries to show how commodification of poverty, the art world through Alan Trevor treats human suffering as an aesthetic subject, not a social problem. Unequal wealth distribution. Clearly, it can be seen about how wealth seems to be in the hands of only a few. In fact, the small orange triangle there on top of the society, that seems to accumulate the major part of the wealth. It questions why the poor, like Huey, must give to prompt empathy from the rich. Yeah, that's true. Even though they are poor, they are expected to maintain the same class as the rich. Use of humor and irony. Wilde cleverly uses wit to expose hypocrisy and contradictions in Victorian societal norms. So recapitulation of whatever we learned through the course of this session, recap of previous knowledge wherein we discussed what are the themes related to the story. We introduced ourselves to the author, introduction to the lesson, purpose of the story or of the author, a few facts we went through in detail, the setting of the story. We also in detail discussed the critical commentary and the social themes that are clearly depicted in the story. Now let us try to assess ourselves with these multiple choice questions. The first question, who is the author of The Modern Millionaire? The options provided are Charles Dickens, Oscar Wilde, Rudyard Kipling, Thomas Hardy. And the answer is option B, Oscar Wilde. Second question, in which year was The Modern Millionaire first published? Four timelines are given here: 1900, 1854, 1887, 1895. And the answer is option C, 1887. The third question, the story takes place during Victorian era, Edwardian era, modern era, none of the above. The answer is option A, Victorian era. The fourth question, what is the central theme of the story? Four themes are given here. By now, you would have had a basic understanding as to what might be the theme of the story. The importance of beauty, dangers of wealth, kindness is more valuable than wealth, revenge leads to justice. And the answer is option C, kindness is more valuable than wealth. The fifth question, what moral or what ethic, what principle, what virtue does Wilde suggest through the story? Four options are given here. Money is everything. People should be judged by appearances. Compassion and generosity are noble qualities. Only the rich can be kind. Obviously, the answer is option C. Compassion and generosity are noble qualities. References used for this session. Thank you.